So you want to build your first hot rod. In this video, I'm going to go through my experience of building my very first hot rod from a pile of parts to a fully functioning car in just 1 year. And also I want to go through some options you'll have when you consider getting your very first hot rod project. I'm Dave Scott. This is my 1936 Chevy Coupe. It's a work in progress, but it's street legal, and as you can see, it drives, it steers, and it stops. I bought it as an empty shell in a box of bits about 18 months ago. I've done almost all the manual work myself, but I did get a mountain of help from online communities and my incredible subscribers. So let's talk basics, cost versus time. Now, if you're in no hurry to get your project on the road, then you can save your pennies and buy all the parts you need over time and get it just perfect the way you want it. However, if like me, you want your project on the road as soon as possible, you have to get creative. Beg, borrow, steal from all your friends and family. I chose option B. Now I should point out, neither option is cheap. You're going to have to accept a considerable financial burden either at the start of your project or a constant drain on your bank account. So, what are the costs to get started? Now, obviously the cost is going to be highly dependent on where you are in the world and the availability of parts for where you are. I'm in Canada, Southern Ontario, so parts availability for me isn't too bad, although it's been obviously a bit restricted with the lack of swap meets due to the COVID pandemic. But let's start with what I would choose first and what I did choose first, and that would be the body style. Whether that be a truck or a car, you kind of have to have something in your head of what you want to build, and then search out for what's available. Again, you're not going to get exactly what you want, but anything could be made to look cool with a bit of, fabricating and skill. What I learned the hard way, when you buy your project, try to get a vehicle with a valid VIN plate and ownership. I cannot stress how important this is right at the start. It will save a lot of pain later on in a project. Ask me how I know. The downside to getting a vehicle with a valid VIN plate and registration and ownership is you will probably pay a premium for that luxury, shall we say, but as I say, well worth it. Also, try to find a vehicle with as many spare parts as possible. Doors, fenders, lights, interior trim, that kind of thing. If you end up buying a car that was only available for 1 year, you're really going to struggle to find parts. If you're not too bothered about authenticity of parts, then you'll find something close enough, so that's something you don't really have to worry about. So let's move on to chassis and drivetrain. If your project comes with a chassis, you need to consider if you're going to have original steering, suspension, brakes, all that kind of thing, or if you want something a bit more modern. Now, the likes of this car here, I'm kind of limited with what I can do chassis wise because older cars were generally quite narrow compared to modern cars. Well, more modern cars. It's a lot of work to convert an older frame to take a modern setup. It's sometimes easier just to buy a more modern frame and fit your body over the top. It's not easy, but it's certainly doable. I decided I wanted a more modern front suspension and steering setup. I chose a Crown Vic, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with a more traditional hot rod. I just wanted something a bit more precise in the steering and suspension setup because I plan to do a lot of driving, a lot of cruising, and I just want a wee bit more reliability and comfort when I'm cruising about. Older cars generally have leaf spring suspension. I wanted coilovers, so I've got a coilover set up at the back with a triangulated 4-link. A fair bit of fabrication work involved, but again, I just wanted it a little bit more modern and comfortable. So next, choices of engine and transmission. It's kind of a stereotype to have a big noisy V8 in your hot rod, but it's not completely necessary. You can have like a straight 6, an inline 4, a flat 4, V6, even a diesel. They all do the same basic job, just a different noise. Choosing a transmission is completely personal choice. Really depends on what you want to do with the car. If you're really just about the cruising lifestyle, then an automatic transmission is probably fine. If you want to do a bit more racing and showy off type driving, then maybe a manual transmission is the way to go. Either way works, but you can always change to a manual or change to a transmission further down the line, but it's important to plan ahead for that contingency. Make sure you leave enough room and access for bolts and all those important things that you might need to get to if you want to make that change later. So how much does all this cost? Well, obviously, as I said before, purely dependent on where you are in the world and availability of parts. But what I will do is I'll give you a breakdown of what this has cost me and my wife. Starting with the body then. Pretty much everything you see here came with the car. And I also got the ownership and VIN tag with this vehicle. Cost me $4,000 Canadian. Now that's just the body and the doors and the fenders. Things like lights and glass and all that will come later, okay? Underneath the body, I have the original frame, but it's modified at the front. I'll give you a breakdown on the cost for that later. We are running a small block Chevy V8, which cost me $450 with a TH300 transmission. Now that's a pretty good price for a running engine, although I have rebuilt it. That is hooked up to a drive shaft which I made, connected to a GM rear differential, which probably cost about $500 to $600. Front suspension and brakes and steering came from a 2003 Crown Victoria. That had to be modified because it was 6 inches too wide. So that didn't cost too much actually, because a friend shortened that for me. But I did have to buy a Mustang 2 steering rack, and that was another $100. The Crown Vic front end was $250. The extra steel that I had to buy to adapt the front of the frame to fit all that was about $100. The side exit exhaust system is pretty much custom made, other than a pair of mufflers from a Dodge Charger Scat Pack. They are mid mufflers. They cost me $50 for the pair, brand new. And at the front, I've got long tube headers, which cost me $80 for the pair. DIY exhaust piping kit, $200. The wheels are stock 16-inch steel wheels with a Ford fitment. I got the set of 4 with reasonable tyres, snow tyres, for $50. However, I did have to buy spacer converters for the rear because it's a GM rear axle. I had to get converter adapters for that. They were $100. Front grills are very expensive. I made this one, just the grill, not the grill shell. The car came with the grill shell, but the grill itself, that cost me $30 to make that from steel rod. And behind the grill is a brand new radiator, full size, custom designed for this car, 400 Canadian dollars. And behind the radiator I've got a nice little fan. Could be a bit bigger, but that was only $15 brand new from a swap meet. Moving on to window glass. Rear panel, 2 rear quarter panels. Split front windscreen, total cost $240. So that's the obvious stuff. Let me take you around all the other parts that were either donated or I had to buy later on in the project. Headlights, they were donated. Value roughly $100. Front flashers, they're far too small, but they'll do for now, $20. Exterior mirrors, $30. Interior mirror, $25. Glove box lid, priceless, donated. I would value that around $80. Gauges, $100. Steering column and steering wheel, $150. Shifter, $100. Electric wiper motor, $250, donated. Seat belts, $100, donated. Seat recovering material done by my wife, $100. Door handles, $20. Rear lights, $100. Aluminum gas tank in there, $100, donated. Brake booster, $150, donated. Brake lines and fuel lines and fittings, $100. Steering linkage, $120. Universal indicator stock assembly, $30. Various dashboard switches for lights, etc., $100. Brake pedal, fabricated myself, $20. Gas pedal, $20, donated. High-low beam switch, $20. Wiring and components, $200. Interior heater core and fittings, $50. Coolant overflow tank, $40, donated. Various rubber hoses and pipes and fittings, $100. Vintage horn, $30. New fuel pump, $40. Alternator bracket, $30. Battery and cables, $150. So on top of all that, you've probably got about $300 in sheet steel, tubes, random bits of metal. And of course, you've got things like paint and fluids, oils, all that kind of thing. So let's add another $200 worth of fluids. But that's only part of the story. The other expense that people don't really tell you about is tools. So let's have a look at what I have to work with and what the essentials really are in order to build your own project at home. I actually built that car right there. It was barely worked on in the garage, but I will show you the sort of tools that you will require to build your own car. Floor jack, axle stands, drill press, workbench with a vise or two, hand drill, angle grinders, welding equipment, electrical tools and supplies, vice grips and metal clamps of various sizes, a well-stocked tool chest, a hammer for every occasion, measuring devices, and of course, lots of coffee and access to Google. I would say that they're the basic tools that you're going to need to start with. If you don't even have them, then it's going to add a considerable amount of money to your project to begin with. Upwards of $5,000 just to get started with tools. There are other tools that you will require along the way, more specialized things, but you should be able to borrow them or rent them from tool shops, that kind of thing. Other things that you need to consider, disposable items like welding wire. You'll be amazed how quickly you go through that, and gas if you're using MIG wire without flux. And also, did I mention drill bits? Drill bits just disintegrate. If you fork out good money for a good set of drill bits, they'll last longer, but Drill bits are just one of these things. It's just an endless supply of money for drill bits. So with all that said, how much has this project cost me so far? This 1936 Chevy Coupe has cost me... I'll give you an itemised rundown of the costs at the end of the video. But I don't think that's too bad, considering it's a perfectly reasonable driving car, road legal, good to go, good for summer. Obviously I've got a lot more to do, like, you know, paint and stuff like that. A lot of interior work still to do, but we'll get there. I'm having fun. But it didn't cost me all that money at once. The biggest outlay was originally buying the car, the $4,000. And after that, it was a mixture of saving up my pennies and kind donations from my amazing subscribers and friends and family. So, I hope you got something out of this video. It's been a journey, shall we say. But I've been enjoying it, made a lot of new friends along the way, gained a lot of information, and I'm still learning. So I hope you've gained a little bit of insight into what's involved with buying your first hot rod and building it from scratch. Please make sure you subscribe and follow along to see what's coming next for Bugsy, the 1936 Chevy Coupe. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.